you, Seth. Our scripture reading today comes from the 14th chapter of Matthew. This is just after the feeding of the 5,000. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves, because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Derek, you come up. You guys can be seated. The disciples were in the middle of a storm. And the crazy part about it is they were exactly where God wanted them to be. Jesus had told them to go on ahead of him, full knowing that a storm was coming and that he wasn't going to be there with them. And it was exactly where God needed them to be. And it's terrifying thinking about that sometimes. That sometimes our storm is exactly where God needs us to be. Exactly where God wants us to be so that he can do in us and through us what he wants to do. And to be completely honest, sometimes that sucks. For some of us, our storms are college. College is hard. There's a lot of tests that we have to take. And it's not always fun. But that's exactly where God needs us to be. For some of us, a lot of us in this room are seniors, and we're getting ready to walk in less than 12 weeks. And that's terrifying because we have to go be real adults. For some of us, we're parents, and the storm that's coming is our daughter saying, "Hey, Dad, there's this cute boy." And for other of us, it's a family member who's sick, and it doesn't look so good. And that's terrifying. But trusting in God in the storm, even though it's hard and it's scary, it's our best option. So how do we get through these storms in life? Because storms are going to come. I heard this saying one time that a smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. And I think it can be translated for us as Christians, where an easy life never made a faithful Christian. These storms are hard, and we usually hate going through them, but they're needed. So let's take a look at Peter. He was exactly where Jesus wanted him to be. But he had a relationship with Jesus, so he was able to trust him. Before he got into the boat and into the storm, he had traveled with Jesus, and he had saw Jesus teach and preach and heal. And so he knew that Jesus was powerful, but he also knew that Jesus cared about him because they had shared meals together. They had traveled together. Jesus probably knew all of the irritating things that Peter did that Peter didn't realize were annoying. Just like when you have a roommate who you love, but they do that one thing over and over again that just drives you nuts. But they still love each other. They still cared about each other. And them growing together had to be intentional. They couldn't just become friends overnight. They had to want to spend time together. They had to want to see each other and to see even the bad parts about each other. And that's important for us too, because we're not going to be able to get through these storms if we don't have a relationship with Christ going into the storm. And maybe we do get through them, but it's going to be a lot easier if we have God on our side and we know that God's on our side. So we need to build these relationships. We
We need to spend time with God and in prayer, reading the Bible, doing all the different spiritual disciplines that you hear about that no one ever wants to really do. But we also have to build up our team that's around us, our friends, our close family that really care about us. Because sometimes through the storm, we're not going to want to turn to God. And God will work through those people that we have in our life, that He's placed there. Whether that's a roommate, or a friend from class, or a professor. And He'll work through these people because you don't want to turn to Him, but He still wants to turn to you. And it's hard to trust God when we're in the storm. But if we have that relationship going into the storm, we're able to trust Him a lot more. The other thing that I saw Peter do really well is that he did it. He went into the storm. Because he said, Jesus, if this is really you, tell me to come to you and I'll do it. And Jesus said, come. And so Peter got out of the boat and walked to Jesus. Now he did take his eyes off Jesus, which is why he began to sink. But he did it. He tried. And for me, most of you guys know what's been going on in my life. I've been going through storm after storm for the last 3 years. And I feel like I haven't had that downtime where I could grow my relationship with Christ. At the end of my freshman year, God called to me and He was like, hey, go to work at a summer camp. I was like, okay, summer camp's cool. It doesn't pay anything, but I'll go. And so He set me up with Beulah Beach. And I loved it. I worked with kids. I got to have fun, hang out, grow my relationship with God. And that was during training. And then the first week at camp came. And I was sitting there. It was after one of the days. I get this phone call from my dad. He's like, hey, Derek, I love you. I'm like, I love you too, Dad. What's up? Well, the test results came back. Mom has stage 4 cancer. And that was the start of the first storm. So I looked at God and I said, God, what do you want me to do? He said, trust me in the storm. It's going to be scary and it's going to be hard, but trust me. I said, okay, God, I'll trust you. What do I do? And so I stayed at camp. I went home for the 4th of July weekend, but I was there for every day of camp that we had. And it was hard because I knew that my mom was battling cancer and that I wasn't able to be there with my family. But during training, I had built a team with me. I had guys like Josh with me who I knew were there for me no matter what was going on. And then the end of the summer came and I got to go home. And I was like, sweet, I get to spend some time with my mom. And God was like, all right, it's time to go back to school. I was like, God, I don't want to. I don't want to go back to school. I want to be here with my family. He said, trust me, it'll be okay. So I ran into the storm again. And I made it through my sophomore year. And it was hard. And I didn't want to be there. All I wanted to do every day was go home and spend time with my mom because I didn't know how much more time she had. Then the end of the school year came and I was like, I'm just going to go home, hang out, enjoy my summer. And God was like, no, you're going to camp. I was like, all right, fine, I'll go to Beulah again. And then 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave for training, my mom's health plummeted. And I was like, God, I'm not going to camp. He's like, trust me, go to camp. And I didn't. I didn't want to go to camp. I didn't want to listen to God. I said, no, I'm spending time at home with my mom. And so I called Beulah, and I was like, hey, guys, I can't do that. My mom's health isn't good enough for me to not be here. And they're like, okay, that's perfectly fine. Do what you have to do. And then, of course, as soon as training camp was over and they started their first week, my mom's health went right back up. And God was like, I told you to trust me. So I was working, and my buddy Deontay calls me. He's like, hey, I'm working at Spring Hill. We need another guy counselor. Can you come? I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so God was like, trust me. And I went. It was a hard summer for me. I had to learn a lot of things that I wasn't ready to learn. I had to work with people that I didn't want to work with. But I trusted God, and I went. Then the end of that summer came, and I had to go back to school for my junior year. I said, God, I don't want to do this. You don't understand how hard this is. Which is a funny thing to say to God, because He understands everything. But He's like, no, go to school. Trust me, it'll be okay. I was like, all right, God, I'll trust you, but I want my mom to be there when I graduate. He's like, okay, trust me in the storm. So I did. And I went to school, and it was hard, because, once again, every weekend, I wanted to run home and spend time with my mom, but I couldn't. Whether I had rugby or work or just not enough money to get home, I had to be here, and I had to get my work done, because that's where God wanted me. And then the end of my junior year came, and I applied for an internship that I didn't think I would get. And I was like, all right, God, whatever. I'll just apply because interviewing is good experience, right? And then He offered me the job. I was like, God, I'm not going. I'm not going on this internship. Because when my mom was in Saginaw, Michigan, the internship was over in Kansas City. And I said, God, I'm not going to Kansas City. That's stupid. And he's like, Derek, trust me in the storm. I was like, all right. But if she's not there the next time I'm going to go home, I'm going to be ticked. So I went to Kansas. And about the 10th or 11th week that I was out there, I got a phone call from my mom. She said, Derek, I love you. I said, I love you too, Mom. What's going on? She said, I'm going home on hospice care. The chemo's not doing anything for me. I was like, God, I'm going home now. He's like, yep, go. And I made it all the way home. And I got to spend a couple weeks with my mom before I had to come back to school. And then it was time for me to come for training because I had to come a few weeks early to school for my job. And I said, God, I'm not going. I want to spend these next 2 weeks with my mom. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to go train for a job while I know that my mom's here suffering. He said, trust me in the storm. And now at this point, I was engaged. My wedding was going to be in June. It still is going to be in June. And I said, God, all I want is for my mom to be at my wedding. I'm going to trust you, but I want my mom at my wedding. He said, trust me in the storm. Go. So I went to school. And then October hit. And I was going, and I got a phone call from my dad, and he said, you need to come home this weekend. I was like, no, I don't. Dad, don't say things like that. And so I went home that weekend, and I'm so thankful that I did, because that was the last conversation that I got to have with my mom. And that was hard, because I didn't know it was going to be my last conversation, so I wasn't as intentional as I needed to be. But I had a good time with my mom, and I went back to school. And I went home every weekend, up until I got a call in the middle of the week that said, Derek, you need to come home now. They don't think Mom's going to make it through the night. And so, in the middle of October, Josh brought me home because I wasn't in a state where I could drive. And so I went, and I was home, and ended up having to conduct a funeral for my mom. And it sucked. It was absolutely the worst thing I've ever had to do, and hopefully the worst thing I have to do for 20 more years. But I had to do it. Took some time off, and I got back to school. And I had made it through the storm that I had been preparing for. And throughout that time, I'd been building relationships with people, not knowing that I was going to need them to get through the end of this storm. I had friends, some of you guys are in this room, a lot of you guys I consider my close friends. And I had people that would come and play video games with me because that's what I needed. I had people that would eat food with me because I shouldn't be by myself in that time. But there's one specific thing that stands out to me that I still remember, and I don't understand why it was so big to me. But I was sitting in the con doing homework, and a friend came up. And this friend was someone that I was kind of close with, but not super close. We'd had some classes together. And Adam came up behind me and started scratching my back. I was like, oh, that feels good. I needed that right now. He goes, this is what you need. This is what I'll do. And it was the simplest little thing, but it meant so much because I didn't know Adam very well. But he was willing to do whatever I needed to help me get through my storm. And that's the last thing that I saw Peter do. When Peter started to sink, he said, Lord, save me. And Jesus reached out his hand and pulled him up. And in the same way, I was able to rely on my friends for food or for video games or for a scratch on the back. And even though I didn't want to need those types of things, I didn't want to rely on people because I'm independent. I can do things on myself. I'm a big, strong guy. I don't need someone to help me through this. But I did. I didn't know it. And it was so hard to trust God in the storm because I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen next. But it was the best option that I had. And it was crazy because in October, after I did my mom's funeral, I looked to God. And I was like, God, I can't run into another storm. I said, okay. I'll carry you out of this. Because I was willing to trust in him. Because I had nothing left to give. I had been running hard for 2.5 years while my mom was battling cancer. And he was like, okay, I'll carry you. Because I needed to finish school. I couldn't just give up at that point. Even though I wanted to. I knew that it would be disrespectful to my mom. And it would have been a waste of my money if I would have stopped in the middle of my senior year. But I was able to rely on my team. And so was Peter. Peter knew that Jesus was going to save him. He knew that he couldn't do anything else by himself at this point. He was starting to sink, and the only one that could save him was Jesus. And in the same way, the only one that could get me through last semester and get me through this semester was God and my friends. Because I needed people. Trusting God in the storm is hard and it's scary. It is always our best option. So I don't know what you need to do today. I don't know. Maybe you're over here and you don't have a big storm going on. Things are good right now. Good. Build those relationships. Build up your team. Or maybe God's calling you into something and you need to run into that storm of everything that you've got. Because that's where God's calling you. And it's scary and it's going to be hard. But you need to trust on God, but trust in God. Or maybe you're already in the middle of your storm. You're scared and you don't know what's going on or what to do next. But all you need to do now is rely on God and rely on those friends that you've built. So Seth's going to come up. He's got one more song for us. This is the time for you to handle your business. If you need to stand and sing and shout to God, do it. If you need to sit there and pray, do it. If you need to kneel, come up, use this like an altar and do it. But handle your business with God right now. Don't leave this place until you have.